Happy Halloween, Scooby-Doo fans, and happy Scoobtober on the Scooby Culprit channel. Today we're going to be looking at the best and worst Scooby-Doo Halloween movie with our special guest Whomp. You'll hear him a little bit later. We're going to be talking about, first off, Happy Halloween Scooby-Doo. This movie is a lot to talk about. Even though it's only an hour and 16 minutes, there's just so much that happens and so little at the same time. So we're going from worst to best here. So Happy Halloween Scooby-Doo, in my opinion, is the worst of the around 5 Halloween Scooby-Doo movies, which includes Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King, Scooby-Doo and Kiss Rock and Roll Mystery, Happy Halloween Scooby-Doo, and Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo. So that's actually 4. Happy Halloween Scooby-Doo is the 31st in a series of direct-to-video films based on Hanna-Barbera's Scooby-Doo. This came out September 15th, 2020 as an early Walmart exclusive DVD before its full release to the public in October 6th of 2020. It was marketed and promoted as the first Halloween themed movie, which we know now is definitely not true. Just because it has Elvira, the Halloween mistress that everyone knows, and Bill Nye for some ungodly reason, and Scarecrow for another, I don't know why, but it didn't really make them any more money because this movie did not do that well. Happy Halloween Scooby-Doo. What a movie. When I first watched it around when it came out, I was just so bamboozled. This is slop. This is not Scooby-Doo. This is like cringe culture, aged poorly. It's just so, it's just yucky. Looking back, watching it now, I see that, you know, it's got a lot of flaws to it, but it's a fine movie. It's just fine. It's not as bad as people say it is, but it's not pretty. Beginning of the movie, there's a Halloween parade happening. The gang are trying to capture Scarecrow. They do capture Scarecrow. Now, what is Scarecrow doing here? That's a weird thing. We obviously know that Scooby-Doo and DC are friends and they always collab with each other, but having a Halloween movie and having Scarecrow of all people, I guess he's a Halloween type villain. Scarecrow gets captured very early in the movie and everyone is happy that the gang saved Halloween for everyone. The town of Crystal Cove. Listen to what Scarecrow has to say when they catch him.
Oh, the fate of Crystal Cove was left in the capable hands of the avocado toast generation. I gotta let him go.
Wait!
Huh?
Yeah. He's referencing avocados. He's also talking about Crystal Cove and the crystals underneath it. There's a lot of references in this movie, like a pup named Scooby-Doo, Phyllis Diller. In the end of the movie, they talk about her. Now, this movie came out around the time that Turn to Zombie Island and the Curse of the 13th Ghost movies were already out. And we know that those movies were not the best. And yeah, they were pretty bad, both of them, I'm not gonna lie. I did just talk about the Curse of the 13th Ghost in a previous video. Go watch that if you would like to. So on Halloween night, the gang are all at Elvira's Halloween Horrors Parade, and they capture Scarecrow. Scarecrow's all like, yep, okay guys, you captured me. And he gets taken away. So Shaggy and Scooby go trick-or-treating after the gang is now heroes for saving the town, but then the sheriff stops the gang because it's a crime scene now because they caught Scarecrow and all that. Shaggy and Scooby left the gang to go trick-or-treating to have all the fun without the gang's help. And they have a ton of Halloween candy and head out, but then they head towards a pumpkin patch where one of Dr. Crane's drones is just lying on the ground, glitching out with like pumpkin stuff all over it, and the words "Total Ala Frame" are on it, and Shaggy thinks it says "Totally Frame." Now, suddenly, they see that a giant truck full of toxic waste is leaking into the pumpkin patch. Suddenly, one of the pumpkins starts touching the toxic waste and it grows a face and comes to life, and there's so many of these pumpkins coming out of nowhere, and Shaggy is running because now there's this giant pumpkin, massive, huge pumpkin. It's the alpha pumpkin, as they call it. I don't know why. Now, going backwards a little bit before we talk about these pumpkins, when they caught Scarecrow, something I dislike about this movie, so you understand that this movie is not good. Daphne is saying all the slang. She's saying womp womp, get burned, yeah bruh, you tripping or whatever. Something I feel like this movie is it's a long episode of Be Cool Scooby-Doo, but a bad episode of Be Cool Scooby-Doo. Daphne is literally just like Daphne in Be Cool Scooby-Doo in the whole entirety of this movie. Everyone else, I guess you could say. So it's basically Be Cool Scooby-Doo, but a bad episode. So now some of the pumpkins begin flying. They have their like leaves out and all this stuff. It's like crazy. They have of branches coming out of them. It's Shaggy and Scooby are running. They're trying to warn the gang, but the sheriff and the gang do not believe them. Then the gang are all back together and they meet Mike and Michelle, because Michelle was like giving the gang candy for saving the town. So nice. And this father and daughter, for some reason, just follow the gang for the whole movie. After a lot of stuff happens, the gang call up Bill Nye because the Mystery Machine got destroyed. Bill Nye sends a supply drop, a Fortnite supply drop, over to the gang, and it is the Mystery Machine X, a white modern electric version of the Mystery Machine, which Fred says has no soul, and I agree with Fred. This thing looks it's a Tesla. Bill Nye pops up as a hologram on the car, and they just yap with him for a long time. They have a whole yap session, while Scooby and Shaggy are trying to beat a pumpkin because they think these pumpkins are crazy, but everyone thinks they're crazy because they probably are high off sugar. Meanwhile, Elvira is packing up her car, and Daphne runs up to her asking if she will be willing to mentor her. Yeah, so that's a whole side plot that really does not last. Back where Shaggy and Scooby are, another pumpkin comes to life and grabs onto Shaggy's. The gang all meet up and they run away from the jack-o'-lanterns where they were. Then they go to the center of town. This is where the town cracks in half. Everything's sinking into the ground. It's going. And now the gang is separated. So Fred and Velma go into the Mystery Machine, Daphne and Elvira into Elvira's car, and Shaggy and Scooby with Mike and Michelle. And they hop on the highway. I don't know how long this highway is. Supposedly they're going 80 miles per hour to escape these pumpkins, right? At least 40 minutes of this hour and 17-minute movie is on this highway. No joke. We are just on a highway for almost the whole movie. The main part of the movie, we're on a highway, and that is about it. The gang start yapping with each other. Velma's trying to think about anything rational because this is weird, right? There's pumpkins coming to life. She literally said earlier, this is a dumb monster. She was not scared of it. It's not even good. Shaggy and Scooby are probably just acting. Like, a scarecrow was bad, and now we have pumpkins. Literal pumpkins. You can easily destroy these things. But everyone says that about like horror movie stuff. Like, oh, you can kill Chucky, just chuck him, you know? Seriously here, these are pumpkins. Just stomp on them, get rid of them. So yeah, they're on the highway. They're escaping the pumpkins because now the pumpkins used all the parade floats to chase the gang. All this happens. All of this crazy whatever. The big alpha pumpkin is on top of the Mystery Machine, which makes Fred angry. The Mystery Machine X gets destroyed, so everyone goes into Elvira's car because Mike and Michelle's car got destroyed too. And ending the movie, because I don't care to talk about the highway stuff because it was a lot of nothing. Besides Bill Nye turning into a cat. Bill Nye is how old? It's on screen how old he is. Can you not? This is weird. Just having Bill Nye in this movie is weird. They run out of gas just as the jack-o'-lanterns start to catch up with them. Everyone gets out of the car and runs to nearby woods. Fred rips off his shirt. That is like the climax of the movie. Fred takes off his shirt and he begins to make a giant scale trap. He's making 500 different types of traps all over the place to capture these pumpkins, and these pumpkins are kind of sort of smart, but they're dumb at the same time, as you can see. Velma and Shaggy and Scooby eat Scooby snacks together. Like a whole entire Scooby snacks are just a drug because they just take it together, and then they have a whole trip inside Velma's brain all together, and they just go back in time to see what they miss. And then Velma realizes something with that drone that Shaggy found all that time ago. We don't find out about that until Velma jumps inside the alpha pumpkin. After most of the pumpkins get destroyed, Velma jumps inside the big one. Suddenly, it shuts down, and Velma comes out safely, revealing that the giant jack-o'-lantern was a mechanical machine, and all the other little pumpkins were those drones that Shaggy found. Unexpected, I know. Very unexpected, actually. Oh, the climax is a little crazy, so I'm gonna try to explain it as best as I can. Velma explains that there was a lithium mine in Crystal Cove that was never approved because it would damage the environment. They thought it was Dr. Crane, but it was actually the sheriff all along. So this sheriff guy is actually not the sheriff that we all know and love. And I'm not talking about Sheriff Bronson Stone. I'm talking about the sheriff guy he was there all the way in Scooby-Doo Where Are You? Almost every episode you see the sheriff. It's always the same design of the guy. This guy is impersonating that sheriff. This guy is supposedly a villain that they caught, the trash monster, and he was like, he had a lithium mining business. It never got approved, and like he was trying to mine lithium to get money, and to get money, it's all about money. And then a hologram of him appears from the pumpkin, and he starts yapping about what he did, and that he was saying that the gang's never gonna catch him because he's escaping with all the millions of dollars that he has because he's a rich guy. Here is his explanation.
All I had to do was unleash my robotic drills. The robots would extract millions of dollars worth of lithium while I chased everyone out of town with my pumpkin drones and made you kids look like fools.
And I'll bet the toxic waste wasn't even toxic waste.
Thanks to you, I'm not allowed to have real toxic waste anymore. So I spent another $1 million to buy green glow sticks, and I snapped them all into that tanker truck.
So then the gang go to this Halloween party that they find on the interstate, and bro, Fred Flintstone, I did not know he was chill like that. Daphne switched clothes with Elvira, so now Elvira is dripped out like Daphne, and Daphne's dripped out like Elvira. And then Daphne takes Elvira's wig, which is actually a monkey. Who? What? And Elvira is a real person. She's playing herself. Real person playing herself. Elvira being bald now. Bald Elvira is weird looking, I'm not gonna lie. She walks off, and the background goes black, and we realize all of this was like staged, maybe, sort of? It's like a conspiracy. And she's telling everyone happy Halloween, saying goodbye to the unseen audience. She's talking straight to us.
And that there is nothing to fear but fear itself. And maybe this. Happy Halloween.
And wishes the audience happy Halloween. And that's Happy Halloween, Scooby-Doo. Me personally, I couldn't, it's just a drag to get through. Like, I don't know if it's my attention span or whatever, but it's not good. I dislike it, but not to an extent that some people do. Some people even think Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo is worse than this. Listen to me. Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo is better. My list would be best to worst. We have Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King, Trick or Treat Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo and Kiss Rock and Roll Mystery, which I guess is a Halloween movie, and then Happy Halloween Scooby-Doo. Can you believe the nerve of Warner Brothers that they would make a movie literally called Happy Halloween Scooby-Doo and have it be the worst of all their Halloween movies? Now we're gonna move on to the best Halloween movie with another Scooby-Doo YouTuber. This one is definitely way better than Happy Halloween Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King, arguably the best Scooby-Doo Halloween movie. But before I give my thoughts about it, I'm gonna have my friend Whomp from the YouTube channel Whomp. He's gonna give his thoughts and opinions on Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King. So let's have him take it away.
I usually don't use a script, but I decided to write my thoughts down for this movie. Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King. This movie's pretty good. It definitely caused some issues for me as a child, but my own trauma aside, it's pretty good. It came out in that What's New Scooby-Doo era of TV, which means that we still have Frank Welker and Casey Kasem voicing Fred and Shaggy and Scooby. But that's the great thing about this movie, is that it's basically just one long, good episode of What's New Scooby-Doo, just with better animation and better writing. And speaking of the length, this movie's length is perfect. Like, it's just an hour and a little bit. I don't know about you guys, but anytime there's like a TV special that's like an hour and a half, 2 hours, it's way too long. 45 minutes to an hour, made for TV special, that's perfect. Now moving on to the actual movie itself, the plot's pretty straightforward. Heroes go on adventure, save the day, whatever. But the execution is fantastic. I love the irony of Shaggy and Scooby loving Halloween but being the resident cowards for the gang. And then the two are forced to go on this mystical adventure involving monsters, ghouls, ghosts, witches, talking pumpkins, and literal goblins. It's a fun time. And speaking of fun, the musical numbers in this movie are awesome. The first one is great, the second one even better. Another great thing about this movie is all the characters are so different and funny and unique, and it's something we've never got to experience in Scooby-Doo before, because we usually don't see monsters. But in this movie we just start off with there's a dude who gets turned into a rabbit, there's some fairies, we get to meet Jack and this bar full of monsters, each one unique in their own way, a lot of them being references to Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And What's New Scooby-Doo, which is a lot of fun. And of course, Jack gets to join us on this journey, voiced by Jay Leno of all people. And moving on to the Goblin King himself, voiced by Tim Curry. The Goblin King in this movie, we mostly see him in a mirror until around the final act. And this is a great way to build anticipation for the villain. Putting my film school knowledge to the test here, by only backlighting him and showing the silhouette, it kind of plays a trick on us as the viewer that makes us think he's a lot more scary than he actually is. Now, we do get the reveal eventually, but it's, you know, it's not perfect. We kind of just cut to inside of the castle. Shaggy and Scooby walk in, and dude's just there, mean mugging the camera. But once he gets up and flies around a bit, we can really see the weight and the stature of this dude, and dare I say, he's quite frightening. Now, unfortunately, this is kind of where the movie slows down for me a bit. Shaggy and Scooby, Goblin jail, get saved by some fairies. Woo! Yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, it's not a big deal. I can look past it. I'm gonna be a bitch about it, but I can look past it. But, you know, whatever. Anyways, final act of this movie. Magician tricks the Goblin King, robbing him of his power and his dignity, if you want me to be honest. I mean, really? You got tricked by this guy? I mean, come on, man. You're the fucking Goblin King. And cute childhood trauma. Now this scene got to me as a kid. Even watching now, I'm a little uncomfortable. But you gotta give it to the movie for having the balls to do this. To go that far, transforming our other three main characters, the main cast, Mystery Inc., into monsters. And not just monsters, I mean like, just off the top of my head, the only other movie that did this was Reluctant Werewolf. And even then, Shaggy was like fully conscious. He wasn't like a mindless monster, he was just kind of hairy. These guys, full-on monsters. They don't know what's going on, they're just complete and that's messed up. Anyways, so Jack the Jack-o'-lantern sacrifices himself, but the Goblin King is a fair ruler and brings him back and cleans up the magician's mess. Side note, I always felt bad for the magician. I know he's an asshole and all, but they really give him the Ben Ravencroft treatment. Anyways, wrap up the movie. The clouds dissipate, the gang remembers nothing of the night before, and they're on to their next mystery, which, November 1st now, so I can only assume is a Christmas movie. Final thoughts, this movie's pretty good. It's not hard to watch. It's, you know, it's not perfect, but I do recommend it if you're looking to get into Halloween spirit. It's a lot of fun. You don't gotta think too much, you just sit there and enjoy it for fuck's sakes. Anyways, thanks to the Scooby Culprit for having me. Happy Scoobtober, everybody, and shoo, get out of here. Go watch the movie.
The best Scooby-Doo Halloween movie. So thank you, Whomp, for your amazing segment of the video, and here are my thoughts of Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King in the movie as a whole. So Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King is the 12th series of direct-to-video films based on Scooby-Doo, and this came out September 23rd, 2008. So this movie, it's a long episode of What's New Scooby-Doo. It came out after the What's New Scooby-Doo era. It has the same animation, characters, voice actors of What's New Scooby-Doo, and I just really enjoyed this movie. It is a fun time. Some parts are hard to get through nowadays. This was Casey Kasem's last role as Shaggy. Of course, he didn't sound the best, but I still love this movie. It is just amazing in all the Halloween aspects that you want. It's unique, it's scary, it's frightening, and it is Scooby-Doo. And let's talk about the movie. So we start off with our intro to the movie, where it has all the different people involved and some really cool cameos of some of the people who made the movie happen. And during this whole thing, we see the gang going through a horror roller coaster ride. The gang just hop out of the ride, and then the movie starts just like that. It's really fun how they just implement the beginning of the movie with the opening credits. We have Coolsville Halloween Festival happening, and everybody is having a great time. Scooby and Shaggy mentioned that Halloween is the time of year that you know that everything is fake. Man, is he wrong, because we see the amazing Krusty, who is supposedly the best magician in this whole carnival. It also is the one who refuses Scooby to see his show, because the gang want to see his show, because he's a magician. He might have a really cool magic act. We go check out his magic act, and it was not good, because Shaggy and Scooby ruin it by showing all the tricks and how he does them. Krusty was not happy because that they exposed him as a fraud during his act. So Scooby and Shaggy caused the whole audience to walk out on him, and Krusty swore revenge on Shaggy and Scooby. Because of Shaggy and Scooby's antics, they get thrown out of the carnival and decide to go trick-or-treating. And the trick-or-treating montage is really fun. It's funny that they go to the same house and change their costume every time. When Scooby and Shaggy are trick-or-treating, they come across the spooky house. The spooky house has Mr. Gibbles inside. And Mr. Gibbles, he is a weird-looking man. It's just all of his magic spells and tools with him at all times. Scooby and Shaggy don't want anything to do with Mr. Gibbles because they just want to trick or treat, but he is telling them something very important. So during this whole thing, Krusty is reading a book after his embarrassing act, and he's looking at the book of how to be a real magician, and he's looking at it, and then a fairy princess enters his tent and looks at what he's reading, and Krusty is reading about a goblin scepter in a spell book, and this goblin scepter is supposedly the most powerful thing of dark Halloween magic that you can get, and you can control Halloween with it. So goblins basically control Halloween in this thing. So goblins are the force behind Halloween. They are in charge of everything. The Goblin King is the one that holds the goblin scepter, and the only way to get it is to steal it. And if you combine the goblin scepter with fairy magic, which Mr. Gibbles tells Shaggy and Scooby, because he's just yapping about them because he said they're in grave danger. He knows the future. He knows what's going to happen. This scepter and this fairy magic all connect, and then you can control the world basically with good and evil. This Princess Fairy decides to do a little trolling and flying around, making Krusty all like, it's a fly. So he got his fly swatter out, and he gets the fairy. He takes her abilities by saying a spell, and because of the fairy princess's whole stupid things, this movie gets crazy, because Krusty becomes a wizard, a warlock wizard, more powerful than Vincent Van Gogh himself, and he is doing some crazy stuff because he has the power of the fairies, which is a good power, but in the wrong hands, it's not so good. Mr. Gibbles is explaining all this to Shaggy and Scooby while it's happening, and he's showing them the future. If they don't help Mr. Gibbles retrieve the fairy stuff, because the fairy goes to Mr. Gibbles' place while Shaggy and Scooby are there, and she is explaining that the wizard is coming and he's gonna get her, and he does get her. Krusty is a wizard now. He gets the fairy from Mr. Gibbles' place, and Shaggy and Scooby are forced to help because they have no other choice. The fate of Halloween is in their hands. So Mr. Gibbles, our magician friend here, he gives Shaggy and Scooby a bunch of magic cards to help them out. Mr. Gibbles explains to them what to do and how to get to the Goblin King. The reason that Shaggy and Scooby are doing all this is because Mr. Gibbles shows them the future of what would happen that day if they don't help, and it shows Velma, Fred, and Daphne turning into real monsters, and that is terrifying to think of. And watching this as a kid was very terrifying to look at, because what the heck, I don't want to see them turn into monsters. So Scooby and Shaggy agree. They get their magic cards, they read one out, and it turns them into monsters themselves. But these monsters are funny looking, they're not scary, they are enjoyable to actually look at. And Mr. Gibbles calls a train, and this is called the Grim Reaper Railway Train, and it will fly them to the spirit world, which will help them get to the Goblin King. So he warns them that they have to return home before sunrise, or else they'll be trapped in the spirit world forever. Meanwhile, Fred, Daphne, and Velma are looking for Shaggy and Scooby because they've been gone for a long time, so the gang's already worried about them. So they go back to the carnival to see maybe they snuck back in after being kicked out. They see Krusty abusing his power, basically, just to make it straight. He's on a call with the Goblin King through the magic mirror. He is talking face to face with the Goblin King, not face to face, but through a mirror. Goblin King is saying, "You're immortal. You can't do any of this. Your Krusty he's a wizard now," and he shows the Goblin King the fairy, and the Goblin King gets very concerned. I guess this fairy princess is not just a normal fairy, and we'll find that out at the end of the movie. The gang see all this. The Goblin King accepts a trade for the fairy for the Goblin King's scepter, which I don't know why he accepted that. Back where Shaggy and Scooby are, their train stops after an emergency stop by Shaggy and Scooby to a random graveyard where we meet this man who has a very nice accent. I really like it. And he is a werewolf. Like, first watchers will kind of notice that because he's kind of hairy and he's right behind the full moon. Kind of a dead giveaway if they're in the spirit world. They're not in the real world anymore. And their monster disguises wear off, so they're just normal again. So they do a little where Scooby goes where Shaggy is, and it makes Scooby look like a werewolf. And this werewolf fell for it, and if he didn't fall for it, he would have eaten them. When they talk to the werewolf leads them down to this amazing ghoulish bar. Check it out. During the second song of this movie, Bump in the Night, which I think is my favorite of the movie, Shaggy has the lyric asking how to get to the Goblin King's castle, and every monster stopped. So, I'm going to talk about this scene for a little bit here. This monster-filled bar, I love it. As Whomp said before, there are monsters from What's New Scooby-Doo and Scooby-Doo Where Are You that were a little bit recolored, but they are the exact same. We have the Phantom Shadows, we have the Creeper, Werewolf, that one roller coaster monster from What's New Scooby-Doo. There's so many of them. You see them here. It's amazing. And they also had Scrappy in this movie as a plush tent later in the movie too. Everyone was scared, so they ran away, and then Goblin King's henchmen show up and they just yap a bunch, and we get the best character, not arguably at all, he's just the best character of this movie.
Hey, Goblin boy, this is a private fight, or can anybody join in?
Like, why not? The more the scarier.
Dude, he is amazing. I love this guy. He's got his candle, and if the candle burns out, he's dead until next Halloween. So this is his time to get his Halloween going, you know? He is just having a fun time the whole time, except when they come across the Headless Horseman.
The Headless Horseman!
I am so tired of working for this guy. Quick, you gotta help me.
And Jack says the funniest line ever. I hate working with this guy because everyone knows the Headless Horseman, his head's usually a pumpkin. Headless Horseman is probably the most dangerous villain here, more lethal, I guess, because the Goblin King is lethal, of course, but the Headless Horseman wants to kill Shaggy and Scooby so badly. Jack's like running with them. The Horseman takes Jack, puts him on, and then Jack becomes the Headless Horseman. The visuals of this, I know this is What's New Scooby-Doo era, but this like visually just looks nice. Like the animation looks pretty smooth for What's New Scooby-Doo era. It's comparable to Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island type of style, and I really like that. Jack has to say goodbye, and he leads them over to the witch's hut to be their next location to try to get to the Goblin King. And at the witch's hut, there's a lot of little antics. The witches are trying to eat them as well, and they transform Shaggy and Scooby into animals, all this. Then they give Shaggy and Scooby the broom. And Broomy, I feel bad for him at the beginning because one of the witches couldn't use him for Halloween, so he was really bummed out. But then we have Shaggy and Scooby that came along, and they need a ride to the fairy world area. When we get to the fairy thing, the fairies are pretty boring. I don't want to talk about them that much. They just help him get to the Goblin King's castle. At the Goblin King's castle, Scooby and Shaggy drink a potion that the witches gave them that they don't know anything about, and it turned them into women. But it didn't, I think, because no one really knows what happened when they drank that. I think it just gave them costumes that they just put on. They get into the Goblin King thing because, dude, these goblins are down bad, bruh. Even for Scooby, like, huh? Like, whoa. And they try to steal the Goblin King's scepter. They fail. The Goblin King is mad, and he casts them to jail. In the meantime, Goblin King leaves after casting Scooby and Shaggy to jail to go make the trade that we were talking about with Krusty, whatever his freaking name. I don't care about this guy. And they actually make the trade until Fred and Daphne stop the trade from happening, but then Krusty still gets the Goblin Scepter and turns into a goblin himself and has the power, and the Goblin King turns into a goose. Daphne and Fred have the fairy. You know, he doesn't have both of the powers yet, so he's not that powerful, but he's powerful enough to turn the gang into monsters, which happens a little bit later. And when that happens, well, Scooby had enough, because in the meantime, Scooby got saved by the fairies, and the fairies brought Jack with them. They all go on the broomy, and then they go back to the real world because they made it in time. And they stop Krusty somehow, some way, by throwing Jack at him. Dead hit. Boom! Everything comes back to normal after Scooby grabs the Goblin Scepter, and everyone is saved. And that is Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King. This movie is a great time for Halloween. Watch it for Halloween. Listen to Whomp. And I really appreciate Whomp being on this video, guys. If you want to check out his quest to find the best Scooby-Doo villain, if you like Scooby-Doo and you want more from a different kind of voice, check him out. This is Scooby-Doo and Goblin King, and it is the best Scooby-Doo Halloween movie. Without further ado, happy Halloween.
Keep it unreal!